Hello and welcome to the weather forecast.
Got milk. Hello and welcome to the weather forecast.
This is the fortnightly series where we go through the most popular upcoming games on Steam and see if we can estimate and guess, frankly, how well they're going to do at launch.
If you're not a native English speaker, or possibly if you're American, fortnightly means every 2 weeks.
Although, actually, this is the worst of all possible times to define that, because the next episode we're not doing because we have a launch. Our DLC is coming out.
Yes.
So we won't be doing one in the next 2 weeks. But basically, just trust us. This video will come out and it'll be fun.
Like and subscribe.
So the first thing we always do is go through the previous episode's 10 games and see how our predictions stacked up against reality.
And a small reminder that the reason we use reviews as our benchmark for predictions is we don't have access to sales figures behind the scenes, but very roughly sales are 30 to 50 times the number of reviews people find, so it's a good proxy.
And we take the number of reviews in the first week of sale because that is usually a good guide for how the game is going to do in the long term. You can tell pretty quickly after week one what the chances are of a game, you get
sleeper hits, you get slow burns, but generally you get a good idea. Open big or you're dead, like a parachute.
Right, onto the spreadsheet. So our first game last episode was Dale and Dawson Stationery Supplies.
So this one, we both thought would do decently. I thought it would do more decently. What we said was, if the social aspect takes off, it's going to do gangbusters. And the social aspect took off, and it did gangbusters. So I predicted 500, you predicted 200, it actually did
1,115 with a 95% positive review.
Yeah, that's a great launch.
Absolutely smashed it. Again, we always benchmark this for people who haven't seen other episodes. A good indie launch for an indie game is anywhere between 100 and 500 reviews week one as a general rule of thumb. So this has been absolutely brilliant. The team have absolutely smashed it. People seem to respond really well to the kind of chaotic office sim thing. So good job everybody, smashed it.
I think it was worth mentioning, you noticed last time that the dev's previous game had exactly one review. So one of the bits of advice to devs generally is if a game doesn't work out, don't try to fix it.
Yeah.
Move on and do something else. And
yeah.
Often your second game will be the one that makes the money, or your third, and this is clearly what worked for them.
Megaloot. Now I'm very smug about this for reasons that will become apparent. Megaloot it is a roguelike from a first-time dev. We estimated somewhere between 250 and 278 reviews week one, which would be a really solid into success based on the numbers we could find, but it did
1,434.
So it did way better than we were expecting. And the reason I'm smug, even though we totally got our predictions wrong and it did better than that, is because this was my wild card. I thought this might do the business because it looked like a very Steam-friendly game, and clearly it did resonate with Steam audiences. And even though the wish lists behind the scenes, which is essentially what we're basing our estimates on, were relatively modest, once it came up in people's discovery queues on Steam, once people saw it in the upcoming lists and the new and trendings, people clicked on it, liked it, bought it, and it really kind of caught fire. So I think that's why it did so much better than expected. It was a really good game that just hadn't had the eyeballs on it until launch, and when it did, suddenly people were like, this is great, give me more of this thing. So congratulations, Megaloot devs, did brilliantly.
Pharmacy Simulator. We didn't think this one would do great numbers. I reckon 50, you reckoned 80, and it did
56.
So yeah, it's a crowded field. There's lots of again, I'm indebted to whoever it was in the comments on YouTube described these as blue collar work simulators because it makes sense, and it just didn't stand
out. Evil Corporation. Now this was launching to EA, which always means it's a little bit rougher than a 1.0 launch usually. It was a sort of horror game that seemed pretty scary. We estimated between 30 to 74 reviews, and it got
12, and it's a mostly negative, which as a Steam I was going to say Steam developer, PC developer, that mostly means Steam developer, you cannot see the red text on Steam without feeling the chill of the grave.
It does clutch at your heart. It's very upsetting to see.
So I'm very sympathetic to the dev. I didn't realise the reason it's called Evil Corporation is it's pretty much a fast follow of Lethal Company, which did incredibly well.
Yeah, which seems to be what most of the negative reviews are about. it says you sort of copied another game and you've not done it as well. So I don't know. I've not played Lethal Company. I don't know how much it maps onto Evil Corporation, but that has not gone down well.
And the other thing the reviews that it mentioned is just that it was a bit buggy because, as ever, if you've got some sort of co-op stuff, my understanding is that there's lots of APIs and things like Unity and Unreal that abstract away a lot of the difficulty of doing multiplayer, but anything that has to do with networks in real life has unexpected problems that you can't just hide behind an API, and people always struggle.
So the next game we talked about last episode, was Flowstone Saga, which was a JRPG, and this went a bit weird. We estimated between 75 and 110 reviews, and then it just didn't come out. Every so often this happens, and I don't know what the reason is behind the scenes. I'm sure it's different for every game that has a launch date and then changes it. It's not something that Steam typically like you doing as a developer. They want to kind of be able to give you the upcoming launch visibility and then you launch as planned. But there may be a good reason on the back end. Maybe somebody was sick. Maybe they got a last minute publishing deal. Who knows? But that didn't come out, so we don't have any numbers for you. So let's just assume we were totally right.
Yeah. But both of us were totally right with our 75 and 110 estimates. Together in between, I'm a little bit sad about this one. I thought it would do better, although I was following my heart rather than my head.
Spoilers.
I estimated 200. You estimated 87, and it actually did
96%. With unfortunately a mixed rating of 66% positive, which is totally fixable. There's no major issue there. It's not the evil red text of death.
Yeah, what they said is some of the puzzles, when I saw the reviews, some of the puzzles are fiddlier with co-op than you'd expect. And also, again, co-op over the internet doesn't always work as people expect. If one person's game crashes, apparently the other game crashes as well, so it's a bit more fragile.
Yeah.
But I thought, it had, their prologue did really well, comparatively speaking, so I thought this might do better. But
it might do very well on sales.
It might do very well on sales.
Because we know that puzzles are a difficult sell on Steam, so people might just be waiting for a good deal. So yeah, I think there's things that dev can do. Sumerian 6. This was a very polished sort of Nazi smasher, and we estimated somewhere between 157 and 250 reviews week 1, and it got
173. So I overestimated. I knew I was because I had some fondness for the devs in question of the game. I actually had a conversation after the fact that suggested to me that this is sort of what they expected and they're okay with it, and that they've got good in these other contexts. And the reviews were very good. It's 95%.
It's amazing.
Positive week 1.
Bakaru.
Clock, a long-time follower, who's Japanese, mentioned in the comments on the last video that Bakaru is the name of the tanuki.
Right.
The Japanese version of the game is something like Bakaru, the little tanuki. But it also is a verb that means something like to change or to transform, but in a sort of magical, enchanting way.
Right.
So there's that. But I estimated 36. You estimated
49.
And it got 70 reviews week 1 with a 97% positive rating. So for a little game, doing real good.
We see this quite often, even if an indie game does relatively small review numbers in its first week, it often correlates with a very high percentage score. So if you compare that to something like Call of Duty, which obviously gets tens of thousands of reviews constantly, but has a surprisingly low score for a game that is obviously very well polished and very well made in many ways, often at the other end of the scale with indies, you see a very small game that has actually relatively few players, but they really love the game. Which is a good place to be as an indie, because we can't compete with Call of Duty, but we can make games that people really love. So clearly that is one of them. So well done, Bakaru team. Flambeau Deluxe.
XXX, don't make me talk about this.
Okay, this was our porn entry from the last episode. You'll be pleased to hear that this episode has no porn at all, which wasn't even us editorializing and cutting it out. There just aren't any porn games coming up. Hooray. This was a porn game. You played a sexy candle. We estimated the wide gulf.
You're a sexy candles procurer.
Well, we argued about this, but also neither one of us really cares. Yeah. We estimated a wide gulf between 35 and 36 reviews, and in fact we were both wrong. It got 11, but it also got 90%.
So one of those reviews was negative.
That's all we have to say about that.
Yeah. I think Steve was as confused as we were. Star Trek. Do you like stars? Do you like trucks? Yes. Star trucks.
I don't know why you go northern when you're talking about space.
It's a Far Show reference, I think.
Which all of our audience will get.
Yeah.
A small British comedy sketch show from the 80s,
Where
90s.
outre, we're boutique.
We are super boutique. Okay, well, speaking of not super boutique, this is this was the number 103 wishlisted game on Steam, which is very impressive to get to. Published by Raw Fury. It was a big, truck simulator in space, basically, and we thought it would do somewhere between 1,500 and 1,744 reviews.
And Lottie was spookily accurate, 1,703 reviews, almost bang on.
Almost bang on. If we'd only had more people.
I mentioned in passing, it's only mostly positive, which is not unusual for a game with that many reviews anyway.
It's exactly what we were talking about earlier.
Field. And I think particularly when I looked at some of the negative reviews, people were complaining about the difficulty. Games that you manage bars going up and down for things like oxygen and health, it's very easy to annoy people, even if it's quite carefully balanced, the sort of perception of unfairness, or if the task needed to up one of your bars is a bit difficult, it can really annoy people. I was playing Mr. Prepper last week, which is well reviewed, but again, people complained about the speed at which bars go up and down. It's subjective, it's hard to balance.
Is that to manage mid-game stuff? Because a lot of the reviews I saw of Star Trek said it was really difficult at the beginning, and then once you get over a certain threshold, it seems to be fairer.
I didn't see that, but I can believe it. I think it's either or both. I think often games can be really hard to get started with because you're scrabbling to keep alive, and then often people can feel like it's a slog in the mid-game.
Okay, now new games.
New games.
So again, to remind everybody, these are the top 10 upcoming games, popular upcoming games on Steam. That list, I believe, is regional. So if you are in a country that is not the UK, you might well see a different list from us. But I bet there are some common denominators. So let's start with StormEdge.
Yeah, I like to look at the game itself and the activity in the forums and things, and try to guess what the output from follower numbers and things when I look at that is before I look at the follower numbers, get more of a feel of it. And I guess it was maybe going to be 250 reviews week one based on how polished it looks and the kind of thing it is. And then the lack of enthusiasm in the forums for the demo made me doubt that. But
was it lack of enthusiasm? Was it negative? I haven't seen it.
Both. There was a demo out in February, and I saw a number of people saying the visuals are too confusing, or the playstyles aren't distinct enough, which might be totally unfair, to be clear. I don't know. But anyway, they've had 6 months to fix it. That's part of the point of putting out a demo.
Yeah.
So I thought it might not be that high. But in fact, my initial estimate was 250, and then my estimate, having looked at follower numbers and things, is 270. So I think it's probably going to be, it's got enough traction, it's attractive enough, it clearly knows what it's doing, that it's going to get some good traffic in the first week.
So I suppose I'm not a big pixel art fan as a rule. I do think this is really beautiful, though. I think the artists have done just a phenomenal job with the colour scheme, the detail. I find it very appealing visually to look at. I think the developer is Chinese, so I'm going to apply the Chinese multiplier, which is just that there are a lot of Chinese people, especially after Black Myth Wukong, on Steam. So even if the game does modestly well, if it is available to Chinese players and resonates with the Chinese user base, you can see those numbers boost quite a lot in a way you might not expect. It's releasing in 11 languages, which means there's no limit to it doing successful. It has split screen co-op as a feature, which I feel is niche and much beloved. So if that is done well, that might be a seller. So I'm going to estimate, the numbers tell me 350. I'm going to be slightly more cautious than that because that seems a lot. So I'm going to estimate 300 reviews week one. But with the China multiplier, you never quite know how that's going to go.
As an aside, I have an unscientific and untestable hypothesis. The games that we estimated last time round, there were a few that did notably better than we'd expected. I wonder if this was Black Myth Wukong being the tide that lifts all ships, because there were more people on Steam in the weeks after Black Myth's launch, and that meant there was more audience looking for the next thing. But that might not be true, and like I say, it's untestable anyway.
Alrighty. Next game. Mexico 1921, A Deep Slumber.
Yeah, this is really interesting. I don't think it will do great because it's such an unusual looking game, and it's got a camera. You're wandering around, a bit of unusual history from Mexico from 1921 that I don't know anything about. I'm glad to see that it's got funding from the a Mexican museum and an art gallery, so they've obviously got local government money in, which makes sense because the studio's avowed intention is to provide to shine a light on Mexican culture and history. It reminds me of the kind of thing that Tale of Tales used to do.
Yeah, it is quite Tale of Tales.
It's quite beautiful in a lo-fi way. It's obviously very heartfelt. It's obviously made to provoke interest and attention. I don't think Steam will know what to do with it. So I'm going to estimate 35 reviews week one, but I'm going to hope that this is sort of what they expect and that they continue to get government funding to make this sort of game in the future, because I'd like to see more. I'll have a go at it. I'm looking forward to trying it out.
Yeah, everything you said, it seems very heartfelt and possibly quite profound. It's obviously based on Mexico's real history by devs who really love Mexico. I think it's worth saying that the art, the graphic design and the UI I think is really exceptional. This is something I'm trying to get better at myself, and I just think this has been done gorgeously, so whomever has been responsible for that, good job. It's self-published by first-timers. It doesn't seem to have huge amounts of buzz behind the scene, and it is obviously a slightly weird sell because it is all about this sort of complicated political backdrop. I mean, the only game that Steam could say was a bit similar when I was looking at it in my account was Disco Elysium, and I can see the thematic connection, but other than that, it seems like a very different game experience. So yes, I think it might do slightly better than you do, but I'm not massively hopeful either, so I'm going to estimate 69 reviews week one. And again, if it does better, I think it really deserves it. It's made with immense amounts of love, but that's my guess.
Yeah.
Edge of Sanity.
Yeah, so both of us noticed a resemblance to Darkest Dungeon in this, which is clearly an intentional homage. Similar art style, similar vibe of you're trying to survive. It's intentionally difficult. You get lasting scars in your characters. But this is Lovecraft in Alaska, which is music to my ears.
You could stop there and I would be like, you give me that immediately. But then we both love Lovecraft.
We do. I don't think you're a huge fan of survival games, Lottie.
I'm not, but this is what I mean. Like, it's even managed to make me think about playing it, even though this is not my vibe. Like, I don't particularly enjoy games that are very punishing. And games like Darkest Dungeon are famous for being deliberately very difficult and therefore very rewarding when you succeed, but I'm just like, I give up and I play something else. But I love the theme. I think this resonates with a lot of other Steam users. I think they will love the theme too. There's a lot of money going on here as far as I can tell. The devs have quite a lot of published games on Steam, so I think they know what they're doing. And the impression of money comes from things like a full voiceover at launch, 12 languages, which is very impressive. It's published by Daedalic Entertainment, who do a lot of high quality indie games, so they know what they're doing. The one risk factor, I think, is a multi-platform launch. They appear to be launching on PC as well as all the consoles at the same time. Now, this depends basically on their experience levels and how big they are as a team, and how much their publisher are doing. If we did multi-platform at launch, I think we would die, but this game looks like it's made by a significantly bigger team. But broadly speaking, I think this has all the stuff that you would want. It's all professionally done. It seems to be very competent, and I think Steam will love it. So I'm estimating 261 reviews week one. I
think I wanted to play the demo. I've got it wishlisted. I didn't have time. We do minutes of research sometimes. It's whole minutes. I think the biggest risk for it is the mismatch of expectations. It looks a lot like our Darkest Dungeon, but if you in art style and in tone, but if you look at the actual gameplay, I think it's quite different, which I think is good. It's by no means a clone, but I think people looking for a sort of a turn-based combat action roguelike might be disappointed. And it is very difficult to manage survival, punishing games properly. This is sort of a version of what I was saying earlier about games where you manage bars, and I'm very used to seeing moderately successful, punishing, artistically interesting games that end up mostly positive on Steam because people get frustrated by them and it's very hard to manage right. So I suspect, my prediction is that that's where it will end up. But I think it will end up there with maybe 210 reviews. It will have a good launch and probably find a following. And I'm looking forward to having a go at it.
And I'm looking forward to watching you play it from behind the sofa. So, pleases everybody. Alrighty, next game.
Lucky Tower Ultimate. This is one of about 3 games this time round that I'm delighted exist, even though I don't think it would do really well. So this is, you noticed, Lottie, this was from Studio Soitz, who did another game we both came across before. It's very different.
Yeah, normally when you look at a dev's history, and I always look very briefly at histories when we do these videos just to get an idea. If the dev has made something before, they have made something similar, right? Like, so all of our games are kind of weird, innovative narrative stuff. We haven't like randomly made a sort of 3D party co-op platformer that, I don't know, and then moved on to what we do now. But this Lucky Tower Ultimate appears to be that I would like, my personal narrative is that the devs were so sick of working on their previous game, I thought, what's the opposite?
And let's do it.
So the last game is The Longing, which is very... it went a bit viral in terms of how many people talked about it because it was such an unusual concept. I believe it was an actual real-time game where you kind of wandered deeper and deeper through a series of subterranean caves, and the game only progressed when the game was running. So if you wanted to complete it, you had to leave it running for at some point like 365 days or something.
Sort of semi-imprisoned guardian of like a subterranean.
And then so it was very kind of unusual, very I think melancholy, very lonely. And then this one, you are a knight running around in his underpants, falling over banana skins and beating people to death with gremlins. And it looks good, don't get me wrong. I just think it's really funny that it's the total opposite of what the previous one was.
Yeah, I can see some similarities in the art style. I wouldn't have if you hadn't told me that it was the same devs. This is clearly something unusual. As with The Longing, I have no idea who it's for. The Longing, I think, had 23 reviews after some years. It didn't really do the numbers. So sadly, I don't think this will do huge numbers anyway, but I'm guessing about 90 reviews week 1.
Did it really only do 3?
23. Well, people can check afterwards, but I think it was double figures reviews on Steam, because it's such an unusual, artistically interesting concept. So
you're right that this definitely feels unlike other games on Steam, which is a real strength. If you can do something that people haven't seen before in the massively overserved PC game world, then you're doing something great. So I think the couple of things worth mentioning here is, firstly, it's launching to early access. We always say that's a bit of a depressor in terms of numbers, because some people aren't keen on paying on buying and leaving a review in EA. Often people will wishlist it and wait for it to come out at full launch. There is an early access roadmap, and there are 8 languages at EA launch, which I think is very impressive. So the whole vibe I get is very professional. I think they're very competent, and I imagine that even if The Longing didn't do the numbers in sales figures, they have learned a great deal from publishing and managing that post-launch. So I would suspect this to be a really competent early access experience. But yes, I would estimate around 110 reviews at the end of week 1. So not too far off yours, but a bit more positive. Mm-hmm. Next game.
Pyrene.
Is that how you say it?
I think so, because so I looked into the devs, and this is another of the games that I'm delighted is on there. It's a small developer from the French Basque country, so that's the south. Yeah, and the Pyrene is Pyrenees, so it's based on the mythology of the Pyrenees. It's got some Basque mythology in there, and Basque culture.
Okay, that makes so much more sense. I thought they were referring to Pyrene, which is the chemical compound, and I was like, I understand.
Maybe a reference as well, but I think it's specifically
that makes much more sense.
The culture of the Southern Pyrenees,
and it does in fact have a mountain in the logo. Now I look at it,
that makes sense. And the mountains are, because I had a quick go at the demo, relevant. So I love everything about this in principle. I'm going to play it and enjoy playing it. It's got some really unusual, elegant mechanics. It's got a nice tutorial at the beginning. I can see the deck building stuff. I've no idea how well it will work later on, but they've obviously thought through the systems and how they're going to interact. It's got a lot of charm. It's made by, I think, a small studio of 2 people who I think probably did the voiceover. At the beginning, it sounds like it was the devs rather than the actors doing the voiceover. I'm not insulting professional voiceover actors. It's obviously a small team doing interesting work. So I'm going to increase my estimate based on follower numbers to 200. This is partly my heart leading my head, but also I think it's sufficiently unusual and interesting in a popular but crowded roguelike deck building market that it might stand out.
Everything you said. This doesn't excite me the way that it seems to excite you. I think if you look deep into it, everything you've said is right. I don't think that many people glancing at the Steam page are going to look that deeply into it. I think a lot of people are going to look at it on a very surface level, give it a couple of seconds and then make a decision. So based on that, I think it's only going to do around 95 reviews week one, because, as you say, the roguelike deck builder genre is really hot right now. Everyone's doing it. Yes, this looks cute. Yes, it's got, trees and grass, and it's a bit different from other ones that I've seen. But beyond that, as someone who isn't an expert on the genre, it looks kind of the same like a lot of other roguelike deck builders. So the question is, why would I play this and not another thing? 95 would still be a very respectable number of reviews week one, especially if they're a two-person team. But that would be my estimate.
So I think, and I'm very much sort of roguelike dilettante rather than an expert. I've played a few roguelike deck builders enough to build up an appreciation for the form. I think if you look at this, you can see it's doing different things quite quickly, but also I think it's possible there are other similar games out there that I just haven't seen, and it's less innovative than I think, so I don't have a lot of
I would love to be wrong.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of confidence in my prediction. I'm hoping for 200. Good
luck, Pyrene. Funko Fusion.
Yeah, it's pretty much the opposite of the previous game. It's made by a substantial team with clearly a lot of money. It's very polished, and it's basically Funko Pops the game. I think they're hoping for something like the Lego games, which were based on different franchises, Star Wars and Tomb Raider and whatnot.
Yeah, I made me think of Fall Guys as well. A sort of very commercially friendly game that deliberately did lots of kind of branding crossovers with people's favourite characters from other games. This just isn't a game that you and I particularly like. We're at the very opposite end of the kind of why we make games spectrum. We're sitting here with our sort of cigars, twirling our moustaches, thinking, yes, what can we say about philosophy in our new narrative game? And this game is saying, you can play as Alan Wake. He has a big head, and then you can buy him in a shop. So, which is fine. I'm not hating on this, and I also want to make the point that the developers who've made this have done a really good job. This isn't us being negative about the developers' work.
It's clearly made with a lot of expertise.
Yeah, like a lot more than I have, certainly. It's just doing something totally different from the kind of indies that you and I both really enjoy. It will probably do quite well because it's kind of scoops up interest from all the disparate brands that it is involved in, and a lot of people really like that. I mean, look at Kingdom Hearts. I didn't like that when I first saw that. It was a Final Fantasy Disney crossover, and that's one of the most successful RPG franchises ever. So people like this stuff. It's just not something that you and I think particularly are keen on.
So I think I say this quite tentatively because I'm a game designer. All this branding and franchising stuff is beyond me. But I think something like Kingdom Hearts. There's a sort of Disney shared cinematic universe, really, and explicitly in things like Once Upon a Time. But Disney characters naturally share the same sort of headspace. And I think if you're a fan of The Walking Dead, you're not necessarily going to be a fan of Alan Wake, although I'm a fan of both, so maybe that's wrong. And this thing of it's a festival of fandom and come in and we've got Mega Man 2 and also Team Fortress. If you like Team Fortress or The Walking Dead, maybe you're going to play Team Fortress, you're going to play a Walking Dead game, and maybe these things don't mash up that effectively. But maybe I'm just wrong and it's really fun and it's going to draw in different fans from all over. But I suspect it's only going to do about 120 reviews week one.
I'm estimating around 214 reviews week one. I think it will have a stronger launch, though I am less certain of its long-term future. But we will see.
Fowl Damage.
I would say this is the opposite end of the spectrum as well. So this is a teeny cute pixel puzzle platformer from a single dev who appear to be working with the devs who'd made Peglin. I'm not totally clear of the relationship there, but multiple devs are credited on the Steam page. There isn't a huge amount of buzz behind the scenes, and as if you've watched our episodes before, you'll always hear us say that puzzles have a tough time on Steam. It's difficult to do huge numbers with a puzzle. It just doesn't seem to sort of capture Steam's imagination the way that something like an FPS would do off the bat. That doesn't mean it can't succeed. It just means it's got an extra hurdle to overcome. So based on the numbers I can see behind the scenes, I'm only going to estimate around 34 reviews week one, but I might be very wrong about that.
Yeah, it's the Red Nexus Games, who are the publishers and I think the co-devs, made a game called Peglin, which appears to be an homage to Peggle. I assume it's an homage rather than like a clone, because PopCap haven't sued them.
Yeah, they appear to still exist.
Yeah. And it's got 11,000 reviews after a month.
Yeah, it did very well.
It did extremely well. So there's going to be presumably some uplift from the developer being able to cross-promote. But although this is aesthetically quite a similar game, the gameplay looks totally different. It doesn't have the sort of pachinko excitement of Peglin, so I don't think it's going to translate that much. So I'm a little bit more bullish. I'm going to guess 30 reviews week 1. No, I'm not. I'm going to guess 46. I'll get the wrong row on the spreadsheet.
It's even more bullish. Okay, Fowl Damage. Good luck to you. Shokudo Underworld. Now this, I think, is really cute.
I really liked it. My immediate impression of this is the third game I'll say that I'm just like, okay, I'm really glad this game exists.
I'm going to apply the Japan multiplier to this, because I think Steam genuinely really likes Japan. Obviously, there's a lot of Japan love in gaming circles. It's a cute... I just want to say this sentence. It's a self-pubbed spoopy sushi sim. Mm-hmm. So I say spoopy here because it is a cute, cozy, spooky game. I'm not just being twee. Because there are some pretty grim elements. I believe you harvest your sushi ingredients from a variety of terrifying Cthulhuoid creatures that live in your cave. So it's definitely spooky, and I think you're trying to appease some sort of eldritch god, which I presume is not going to treat you terribly well when you summon him or something. But of course it is still an adorably drawn restaurant management sim thing with lots of crafting. So I think it's very sweet. There isn't a huge amount of buzz behind the scenes that I can find. It doesn't have a huge amount of wish list, and there is no forum discussion at all that I could find, which I've never seen before. So I don't know if that is the developers just haven't focused on Steam and have a bigger platform elsewhere, or it just hasn't been seen by the world. Similar to Megaloot, and maybe when people see it, it will kind of take off a bit. But because I'm not seeing a huge amount of numbers behind the scenes, I'm only going to estimate 16 reviews week 1.
So I am, again, more optimistic unusually. I'm going to go for 30 reviews week 1. And my thinking is, if you look at the publicly available Steam data, it doesn't have many followers. But the followers did shoot up in the last few days.
Did they?
Yeah, which suggests it's got good velocity, the term is, and it's going
Steam likes velocity.
Steam likes velocity, and it means that if people are seeing it for the first time as it comes in upcoming, they're having the same reaction as that we did of, oh, this looks really cute.
That's very true.
So I think once it gets going, it may attract a following. So I'm guessing 30.
I hope you're right. Cooking is in at the minute, so I hope that helps it as well. I wish you the best of spooky luck. Dragon Spirits 2.
Yeah, this is an aesthetic which is not accessible to me. It's a different visual language from the one that I, as a sort of Western dev, speak. So I find it quite hard to understand what's going on. But it's a creature collection battler thing, and there's been a couple of other games in this franchise before, so it's got a following, and they're clearly quite enthusiastic about their setting. Actually, some of the still art I'm looking at now is very beautiful, but I struggle to understand the context and the appeal. So just going on the fact they've got some previous track history with exactly this franchise, and they've got decent momentum from the follower data, I'm going to guess it's 60 reviews week 1.
My guess was 59. We do this independently, everyone listening, but we sometimes totally agree. Everything you said, I think it is clearly an Eastern game, which is not a bad thing, but it does mean that it's not immediately easy to pass to Western eyes. Of course, it has the China multiplier, and that might do it some very good numbers. However, the previous game in the franchise, Dragon Spirits 1, that only released in 2023, only has 223 reviews by now. So I don't think this is going to take off massively. So yeah, that's why I'm estimating 59.
I did just notice one of the recent events is please do leave your suggestions in Discord so that I don't miss them. It doesn't say we, it is leaving suggestions in Discord. So I suspect this is a small team or even a solo dev.
Which I understand is very rare in China, so if that is the case, then that's even more interesting to see what happens. But yeah, that is Dragon Spirits 2. Leading us on to our final entry for this week, Melobot.
Two kinds of Steam player.
Yeah, so when I saw this, my first comment was, cute little robot, let me help him!
And when I saw it, my first comment was, my heart always sinks a bit when I see a robot protagonist, because those games often don't do very well.
Actually, he's lying. His first comment was, "Are these devs French?"
Yes, that's true.
And they are.
I looked up the developer, and they're Paris-based. Again, I've expressed my enthusiasm
We both
for the French game dev
love
scene in the past,
French devs.
because often it's innovative and distinctive to Anglo eyes, and I think this is innovative and distinctive, and I think it's going to do about 25 reviews week one, because it's just not very Steamly. It looks a bit puzzly. It's hard to see exactly what's going on. It's charming. But it reminds me of another game from a French developer, which equally we both had considerable affection for a few weeks back, that just didn't do the numbers.
Was that the platformer where you were a little seed? Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, again, so I think you're absolutely right when you say it just doesn't look terribly steamy. I honestly don't know how rhythm or music games do on Steam. I wouldn't say immediately that they have a mounted decline the way that I do about puzzlers, but I don't see it appealing to a casual, gigantic portion of the Steam audience.
Yeah, Crypt the Necrodancer famously did really well, but of course that was an action roguelike linked to the...
Exactly. It does have an advantage of being an example of the turn Mars green thing that I think resonates with people. I think particularly at the minute, actually, what I mean by this is when you start off in a world that is barren or ill or grey or something, and then over the course of the game your actions turn that environment into a sort of lush, joyous place. That's a very rewarding game loop that can be expressed very visually, and it makes people feel good, and a lot of it has a kind of eco message, and that's all really lovely for people to participate in. And I think this definitely has some of that, so I think it has a joyous game loop, but from what I see of the trailer and the screenshots, it does look quite puzzly rather than Steam PC, which I think will limit it. So yeah, I'm only going to guess around 35 reviews week one, but if it does better, then I would be delighted.
We've been talking recently about the immense success of a lot of sort of conveyor games, things like Dyson Sphere Simulator, Factorio, Satisfactory, Shaped 2 recently. And as a massive nerd and a software developer, I am startled by the popularity of automation games, because it feels so much like work, and I often enjoy the first part of them, and I just get
and then it gets
lost
stressful.
in the detail. It gets stressful, and I wonder how much of the appeal of it is because you are changing the world. If you look at something like Satisfactory, which finally launched out of early access, then the world looks different at the beginning and the end, so you're seeing your effect on the game. And I think the greening Mars effect that you've talked about, which I really enjoyed in Surviving Mars, and made Planetcrafter's prologue did much better than we estimated.
Yes, I forgot.
Another
really
bloody French developer. Guys, stop being better than us.
One to watch.
Yeah. So I think anything to do with greening the environment,
People like it.
It's a winner.
Alrighty, well, like we said, we are not going to come back next week, so we'll just leave you with our wildcards.
Because we should talk about what we're doing next week.
Well, we'll do our wildcards first, and then we'll do a bit of sneaky marketing.
What's it called? The sushi game,
Shokudo
Underworld.
Okay.
Yeah.
How come?
I think that might not do, because I think it's an unusual, polished-looking thing. It's got good velocity in the wish list recently. I think it might catch on and do 5 to 10 times the reviews I expect from it.
And my wild card I'm going to pick as Edge of Sanity, because I think we're getting into Halloweeny, October-y season. People are starting to come in and looking for something a bit spooky to play. And Darkest Dungeon obviously did absolute gangbusters. So if it is designed in an attractive way, I think...
And what was it, your wild card that paid off last time?
Megaloot,
yeah, which did extremely well.
Right, so now we can do our marketing-y bit, but no one should know that, so don't pretend that this is marketing-y. We're not here next week because...
we're launching, what's it called again?
House of Light.
I keep calling it Book of Light and House of Hours.
Okay, this is terrible marking. The developer doesn't remember its name.
I'm the creative director. I'm not the okay, we are releasing
see what I'm working with here?
Expansion pack for Book of Hours called House of Light. And basically, if you're watching this channel, you probably already know it because you probably already play our games. But it's all the stuff that I would have liked to put in Book of Hours at launch if we'd had another year to work on it, plus another more. There's about 500 bleeding unique lines of dialogue with the different visitors and cooking at salons, and I've expanded the visitor stories, so you can find out what happens at the end of them. And there's some more endings, because apparently 99 endings wasn't enough for you guys, and these endings are much more developed.
Yeah. So that's why we're not doing an episode next week, but in the one that we come back with, we will of course review how these games did that we talked about today, the week after they launched. So we hope that we see you there again.
Got milk?
Bye for now.
Go.